I've always preferred the night shift. There's a specific kind of silence you only find in the high plains of Nebraska at 3 a.m. A heavy, muffled quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. My name is Elias. I work at a small, sun-bleached service station off Route 20. It's the kind of place people only visit when they're desperate for fuel or too tired to keep their eyes open. My shift runs from 11 o'clock p.m. to 7 a.m. It's mostly just me, the hum of the refrigerated milk cases, and the moth-eaten darkness outside. Last Tuesday started out like any other night. The wind was low, and the fluorescent lights overhead were buzzing with that familiar sickly yellow flicker. At exactly 1:14 a.m., a car pulled in. It was an old, heavy-bodied sedan, the kind of black that seems to swallow light. It didn't pull up to the pumps. Instead, it rolled slowly into the far corner of the parking lot, just at the edge of the reach of our outdoor lights. The engine cut out, but the driver didn't get out. No lights came on inside the cabin. I sat behind the counter, flipping through a magazine, waiting for someone to walk through the double glass doors. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I looked up. The car was still there. I couldn't see the driver through the tinted windshield, but I felt a prickle of unease on the back of my neck. In this part of the country, a car sitting dead still in a dark lot usually means trouble, or someone needing help they're too proud to ask for. I decided to ignore it. I went back to my magazine. About 20 minutes later, I looked up again to stretch my neck. I froze. The black sedan wasn't in the corner of the lot anymore. It was now parked directly in the center of the pavement, about 30 feet closer to the store. I hadn't heard an engine start. I hadn't heard the gravel crunch under tires. In the dead silence of the plains, you can hear a cricket sneeze from a mile away. But that car had moved in total silence. I rubbed my eyes, thinking the exhaustion was finally catching up to me. I took a long sip of lukewarm coffee and stared directly at the vehicle. It sat there, low and hulking, like a predator waiting in tall grass. I decided to test myself. I stared at the car's hood, refusing to look away. My eyes began to sting. They watered. Eventually, the urge became too much. I blinked. In the split second my eyelids were closed, the car surged forward. It was now parked just 10 feet from the front doors. My heart hammered against my ribs. There was no physical way a 2-ton steel machine could move that distance in a fraction of a second without making a sound. The driver's side window was level with my line of sight, but the glass was so dark it looked like a hole cut into reality. I backed away from the counter, my hands trembling. I reached for the telephone to call the sheriff, but my eyes stayed glued to that black paint. I blinked again. The car was now inches from the glass doors. The front bumper was almost touching the push sign. I could see the fine layers of dust on the hood. I could see the chrome grille reflecting the interior of the store. But there was no one in the driver's seat. It looked empty, completely empty. I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. I needed to see what was happening. I needed to know if I was losing my mind. I turned my head slightly to look at the security monitor mounted above the tobacco rack. The CCTV system is old, but it covers the entire front lot. I looked at the screen. Then I looked at the glass doors. Then back at the screen. On the monitor, the parking lot was empty. The pavement was clear. The lights cast long, lonely shadows across the concrete, but there was no black sedan. According to the camera, nothing had pulled into the station all night. I looked back at the doors. The car was right there. It was so close I could have reached out and touched the glass and felt the cold metal on the other side. It was physically occupying the space, yet the camera saw right through it. I realized then that it wasn't a car. Not really. It was something else. Something that only existed when I was looking at it. I backed up into the storage room, tripping over a crate of soda. I was terrified to close my eyes. I tried to keep them wide, staring through the narrow gap in the storage room door, watching that black shape sitting just outside. My vision started to blur. My muscles ached. I knew I couldn't keep this up until 7 o'clock a.m. I checked my watch. It was only 3:30 a.m. I leaned my head against the cold brick wall, staring at the car through the door crack. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand. I tried to do one eye at a time, but the brain doesn't work like that when you're panicking. Eventually, the exhaustion won. My heavy eyelids fell shut for a long, slow second. When I opened them, the store was silent. The car wasn't outside the glass doors anymore. I felt a brief wave of relief, thinking it had finally vanished. Then, I noticed the front doors of the station were standing wide open. The cold night air was whistling into the building. I looked down. There, on the linoleum floor of the aisle right in front of the storage room, were 4 wet, black tire tracks. The car wasn't outside. It was inside the building. I didn't hear a sound. I didn't hear the glass break or the metal groan. I just sat there in the dark of the storage room, staring at the empty space where the car should be, knowing that it was somewhere behind me in the shadows of the warehouse. I'm still sitting here. I'm afraid to turn around, and I'm very, very afraid to blink. The building was called the Meridian Plaza. It was 16 stories of glass and steel, sitting on the edge of a developing business district in Ohio. Most of the floors were still shells, just concrete and exposed wiring, but the 7th floor was finished. It was a sea of gray cubicles, beige carpets, and brand new landline phones that had never been used. My job was simple. Stay in the lobby, check the monitors, and do a perimeter walk every 2 hours. The property manager, a man named Miller who looked like he hadn't slept since the 90s, gave me the keys and a single specific instruction. He didn't say it with drama. He said it like he was telling me where the light switches were. If a phone rings on the 7th floor, he said, don't answer it. Just keep walking. I asked him why. He just shrugged and said the wiring was faulty and the technicians were still debugging the system. He told me it might be loud, but it was harmless. I started my shift at 10 o'clock p.m. By midnight, the silence of a vacant skyscraper begins to feel heavy. It's not a peaceful quiet. It's a pressurized kind of silence, like you're underwater. At 2:45 a.m., I took the elevator up to the 7th floor for my scheduled rounds. The doors slid open with a soft chime. The air up there felt different, colder, and smelling of industrial carpet cleaner and static. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, bouncing off the plastic partitions of the cubicles. I reached the center of the floor when I stopped. I keyed my walkie-talkie to check in with the base station, even though I was the only one on duty. It's a habit you pick up to keep from feeling lonely. Station 1, this is Elias. 7th floor is clear. Proceeding to the stairwell, I said. My voice sounded small in the vast, open space. I waited for the static to clear, clipped the radio back to my belt, and turned toward the exit. Then, the phone started. It wasn't just one, it was all of them. Every single desk in that massive open place, an office had a phone, and every single one of them began to ring at the exact same moment. The sound was deafening, a synchronized, shrill electronic chirp that echoed off the glass windows. I froze. Miller told me they were debugging, but this didn't feel like a glitch. It felt like an invitation. I should have walked away. I should have headed straight for the stairs, but the human brain is a strange thing. It hates a mystery. I found myself walking toward a desk in the nearest row. My hand was shaking, just a little bit. I reached out and lifted the receiver. I didn't say anything. I just held it to my ear. For the first few seconds, there was only the hum of a long-distance line. Then, I heard it. Station 1, this is Elias. 7th floor is clear. Proceeding to the stairwell. It was my own voice. Not a recording that sounded like me. It was me. The exact same inflection, the same tired rasp, even the slight crackle of the walkie-talkie static was there. But I had just said those words less than a minute ago. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the desk, but the line stayed open. I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled my radio from my belt to call for, I don't know who, someone, anyone. "Who's there?" I whispered into the radio. "Who is playing that?" I waited. Silence. Then, 30 seconds later, the phone still sitting off the hook on the desk began to emit a sound. "Who's there? Who is playing that?" My own whisper coming back at me from the plastic speaker. I realized then that it wasn't a recording. A recording has a start and an end. This was a mirror. Something in this building wasn't just watching me, it was repeating me. But there was a delay, a perfect intentional lag. I turned to run for the elevator, but as I moved, I heard the sound of footsteps. They weren't coming from the hallway. They were coming from the other side of the cubicle wall I was standing next to. Thump, thump, thump. They were heavy, steady, and familiar. I stopped dead in my tracks. The footsteps stopped too, exactly 3 seconds after mine did. I stood in the dark, my flashlight trembling in my hand. I realized that if the delay was consistent, whatever was on the other side of that partition was doing exactly what I had done 3 seconds ago. I held my breath. 3 seconds passed. I heard the sound of a sharp, inhaled breath from behind the wall. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just began to walk toward the elevator slowly. I didn't want to make any sudden movements. I didn't want to hear them reflected back at me. As I reached the elevator bank, I pressed the down button. Clack. I wadded. 3 seconds later, from the dark middle of the office floor, I heard the distinct sound of a finger pressing a plastic button. Clack. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and frantically hit the button for the lobby. As the doors began to slide shut, I looked out into the darkness of the 7th floor one last time. The motion sensor light at the far end of the room clicked on. I saw a figure step into the light. It was wearing my uniform. It had my build. It was holding a flashlight exactly the way I held mine. It didn't have a face, just a smooth, pale surface where features should be, like a thumbprint that had been rubbed away. It began to raise its hand to wave, just as I had reflexively reached out to grab the closing elevator door. I reached the lobby and didn't stop. I ran past the desk, out the glass front doors, and into the cold night air. I didn't go back for my bag. I didn't call Miller. I just drove. I'm at a diner now, 30 miles away. It's well lit and there are people here. I'm trying to convince myself that it was a hallucination or some high-tech corporate prank. But I just looked at the clock on the wall. I've been sitting here for exactly 10 minutes. I just felt a cold draft on the back of my neck, and from the empty booth behind me, I just heard the sound of my own car door slamming shut. I've always been good at driving. Not the fast, cinematic kind. The invisible kind. I move high-value assets across state lines for people who don't exist, using roads that don't appear on your GPS. The rule is simple. The cargo is a ghost, and so are you. Usually, I'm alone. But for the haul from Oregon to a private archive in New Mexico, they assigned me a handler. Her name was Elena. She was middle-aged, wore a crisp charcoal suit, and smelled faintly of antiseptic and peppermint. She looked like she belonged in a boardroom, not the cab of a Peterbilt at 3 a.m. The conversation, for the first 6 hours, we said nothing. The only sound was the low hum of the tires against the asphalt. But somewhere outside of Ely, Nevada, the silence broke. Not with a bang, but with a soft, melodic laugh. "My father used to measure my sleep," Elena said, looking out at the darkened desert. "He was a lead researcher for the firm. He believed that human emotion was just a series of inefficient chemical spikes. Every morning I had to log my dreams in a spreadsheet. If I felt happy, I had to explain the utility of that happiness." I gripped the wheel a little tighter. "Sounds cold." "It was clinical," she corrected gently. "But it makes you appreciate the gaps. The moments where nobody is measuring you." We spent the next 4 hours talking. Truly talking. She told me about the first time she tasted a peach, how the sweetness overwhelmed her because she'd only ever eaten nutritional pastes. I told her about my life before the ghost jobs. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't just a driver. I was a man. We were two people drifting through a vacuum, finding a strange, quiet warmth in each other's company. It was the most human I had felt in a decade. That was my first mistake. The high beams. The sun was just a bruised purple line on the horizon when the lights appeared. They were blue, not police blue, but a piercing industrial LED white blue. The black SUV came out of nowhere, hovering inches from my rear bumper. I signaled for them to pass. They didn't. They just stayed there, blinding me through the mirrors. "Elena," I whispered, "check the manifest. Are we off schedule?" She looked at her tablet, her face pale in the glow. "No, we're perfect. We're exactly where we're supposed to be." Suddenly, the SUV lunged. It clipped our rear left panel. The trailer jackknifed slightly, the screech of metal on metal echoing across the empty flats. I fought the wheel, muscles screaming, but a second ram sent us spinning. We tumbled off the shoulder. The world became a washing machine of shattering glass and dust. The erasure. When the world stopped spinning, I was upside down. My left arm was pinned, and the scent of leaking diesel was thick in the air. I looked over at Elena. She was alive, coughing, her hair matted with blood. She reached out, her fingers brushing my hand. It was a desperate, terrified squeeze. A final moment of that inefficient human emotion. Then, the door was ripped off its hinges. A man stood there. He wasn't a monster. He didn't have a weapon. He was wearing a tactical vest and a headset, his face completely expressionless. He didn't look angry. He looked like a man checking a grocery list. He reached into the cab, ignored me entirely, and grabbed Elena by the throat. "Wait!" I croaked, spitting blood. "She's with the firm! She's a handler!" The man didn't speak. He dragged her out through the broken window. I heard her scream, not a cinematic scream, but a wet, rattling sound of pure realization. I struggled, kicking at the dashboard, trying to see what was happening. I saw the man pin her against the side of the overturned truck. He didn't hit her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver device, a pressurized injector. He pressed it against her neck. Elena's body went limp instantly, not dead, but void. Another car pulled up. A pristine white sedan. A woman stepped out. She looked exactly like Elena. Same height, same charcoal suit, same peppermint scent. She looked at the limp body of the woman I had shared my life story with as if it were a piece of litter. "The connection was logged," the new woman said, her voice a perfect hollow chime. "Violation of Protocol 4, emotional tethering." The ending. The man in the vest walked over to me. He looked down at my pinned arm, then back at the woman in the white sedan. Is he still viable? The man asked. The woman who looked like Elena leaned down, peering into the wreckage. She looked directly into my eyes. There was no recognition, no peach stories, no spreadsheets, just a vast, terrifying emptiness. The driver is a depreciated asset, she said calmly. But the cargo must move. Leave him. They didn't kill me. They didn't have to. They simply unhooked the trailer using a mobile crane they'd brought with them. I watched, pinned and bleeding, as they attached my ghost haul to a new truck. I watched the woman who wasn't Elena get into the passenger seat. As they drove away, the new Elena looked back at me through the window. She didn't wave. She didn't sneer. She just watched me with a blank, observational stare, her lips moving silently as if she were logging my dying breaths into a spreadsheet. I'm still here. The sun is getting high now. The diesel is still leaking. My phone is smashed and the road is empty. I realize now that Elena didn't die when they injected her. She died the moment she smiled at me. And as I feel the heat of the desert begin to cook the cab of the truck, I realize the firm doesn't care about the body. They only care that the ghost is gone. And out here, under the wide blue sky, I am the only thing left that remembers she was ever real. Which means, very soon, she won't be.